Ella Carter is a passionate and driven marketing analyst. After a long and exhausting day at work, she hurriedly made her way to her car, eager to get home and unwind. But in her fatigue and distraction, she accidentally got into the wrong car, a mistake that would change her life forever. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Let's go. Ella Carter is a beautiful and intelligent young woman, a passionate and driven marketing analyst. She constantly strives to excel in her work, even if it means sacrificing sleepless nights and hastily eaten meals at her desk. At 28, Ella has established a solid position at the prestigious tech company she works for. Her colleagues admire her dedication, but no one knows that the pressures of work are gradually wearing away at the energy and optimism she once had. Today was particularly stressful. The day had been filled with back-to-back meetings from morning until evening, with deadlines and demands piling up relentlessly, leaving her barely able to catch her breath. Ella felt like she was battling a fierce wave, constantly struggling to keep her head above water. She hurried out of the building where she worked as the sunset painted the sky a deep red, leaving behind the noise of traffic and bustling crowds, though the exhaustion still clung to her. Her mind was a jumbled mess, preoccupied with unfinished reports and incomplete tasks. Feeling the weight of fatigue, Ella walked briskly through the nearly empty parking lot. She paid no attention to her surroundings, just hoping to sit in her car and rest for a moment, longing to escape the suffocating pressure of work. Her tired eyes scanned the rows of cars until they landed on a sleek black sedan that looked remarkably like hers. Without thinking, she opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, exhaling a sigh of relief. "Oh God, what a long day," Ella muttered, leaning her head back and closing her eyes. She didn't realize that the man in the driver's seat was looking at her with a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Tough day, huh?" A warm, deep voice broke the silence, and Ella's eyes flew open. She turned to see a stranger sitting next to her. His sharp, mysterious gaze, neatly styled hair, and impeccably tailored suit exuded a level of sophistication and authority. For a moment, it felt like the blood in her veins had frozen. Her heart pounded wildly as she realized her huge mistake. I'm so sorry," she stammered, her face flushing with embarrassment. "I thought this was my car." The stranger smiled, a hint of amusement playing at his lips, but his eyes held a depth Ella couldn't quite decipher. "It's okay," he replied calmly. "It happens to the best of us, especially after a long day." Ella had no idea that the charming and composed man in front of her was none other than James, the CEO of her company. James continued to smile, and something in his eyes made Ella feel even more disoriented. The fading sunset behind him cast golden light through the car window, highlighting the strong features of his handsome face and the composed demeanor of someone who wielded great power. Yet instead of reprimanding her or showing annoyance, James seemed genuinely amused by Ella's unexpected intrusion. James spoke again. "I've had days so exhausting that I couldn't tell up from down, either." Ella sat frozen, her heart still pounding and her face burning with embarrassment. She quickly grabbed the door handle, ready to flee the scene to escape the mortifying situation. "I'm really sorry, I should leave," she blurted, her voice trembling. But before she could open the door, James raised his hand, not to stop her, but to reassure her. "Wait, no need to rush off," he said, his voice gentle and inviting. "Maybe we can take a moment to relax. You look like you're about to explode from the stress." Ella looked at him, surprised and more confused than ever. No one at work, especially a superior, had ever spoken to her so casually. Strangely enough, his presence didn't feel intimidating. Instead, it brought a sense of calm. Ella took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She sat up straight, her eyes flickering briefly to the man in the driver's seat. He had an air of natural confidence, his expression both composed and slightly amused. It baffled her how someone like him could make her feel oddly safe. "Honestly," Ella began, her voice low and tired, "work has been draining lately. Endless meetings, back-to-back projects. I feel like I'm never good enough, no matter how hard I try." She turned her gaze out the window, eyes lost in the cityscape. "Some days I just want to run away from it all, but then I think about how many people at the company rely on me." James tilted his head, his expression softening as he listened. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a profound understanding. "I know that feeling," he said, his voice warm. "A big company can be like a giant machine, and sometimes we all feel like tiny cogs in the system." He let out a gentle sigh, his eyes reflecting genuine empathy. But even those at the top aren't immune to that kind of pressure. Stress doesn't discriminate. Ella was taken aback. She hadn't expected this man, who looked like he belonged in a world of luxury and power, to understand what she was going through. Her gaze softened, and she managed a weary smile. "That's strange," she admitted. "Hearing you say that makes me feel better. Like someone actually gets it." James smiled gently, a warmth in his eyes. "That's something people often overlook. Everyone deals with pressure, no matter their position. But it's important to remember that we're never truly alone. Sharing that burden can make it feel a little lighter." A comforting warmth spread through Ella's chest. His words weren't just empty platitudes. They felt sincere and heartfelt. She looked at him, surprised by the sense of trust she found herself feeling toward a stranger. "Thank you," she murmured. "Not everyone takes the time to listen, especially when they don't know who I am." James regarded her, his smile still soft. "Everyone deserves to be heard, and sometimes talking to a stranger helps us see things more clearly." He paused as if he wanted to say something more, but chose to remain silent, his gaze full of genuine care and understanding. Ella bit her lip gently, feeling the air in the car lighten slightly after she had shared her work pressures. She turned to look at the man listening to her, his face showing a rare kind of understanding. "I don't know why I'm telling you so much," she said, blushing slightly. "Actually, we don't even know each other, do we? I'm Ella Carter, from the marketing department at Novatech Solutions." James tilted his head, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Nice to meet you, Ella," he replied. "I'm James." He paused for a moment, as if considering something. "Just James," he added, maintaining an air of mystery and gentleness. Ella raised an eyebrow, tilting her head slightly at the way he introduced himself. "James," she repeated, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. "How strange. The way you say that makes me think you're hiding something." She let out a small laugh, trying to ease her own curiosity. James smiled, a smile that hinted at something deeper. "Maybe I'm more mysterious than I think," he said half-jokingly. "But I promise, there's nothing dangerous about it." Ella burst out laughing, and the tension she had felt earlier gradually dissipated. "All right then, mysterious James. Thank you for being the most pleasant stranger I've ever met on a stressful day like this." James kept his smile, but his eyes held a different emotion, something tender and slightly conflicted. "My pleasure," he replied. "And who knows, maybe I'll get the chance to hear more about your stressful days." They both laughed, and the atmosphere in the car grew lighter, as if the world full of pressure and expectations no longer weighed so heavily on their shoulders. Ella stepped out of the car feeling a sense of relief and comfort. She had no idea that the man who had just listened to her was the CEO of the company she worked for. Hit the subscribe button to join us on journeys full of emotions and surprises. One late afternoon, Ella walked into her favorite cafe after work, craving a bit of peace after a long, exhausting day. The warm aroma of freshly roasted coffee filled the cozy space, gently soothing the stress in her heart. Ella chose her usual table by the window, where she could sip her coffee while watching the hurried crowd outside. Her mind wandered back to the strange but memorable conversation she'd had a few days ago with the mysterious driver. She let out a quiet sigh, wondering why that man had left such a deep impression on her. His words of encouragement and genuine concern still echoed in her mind, like a gentle breeze lifting away her weariness. The cafe door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped inside. James. He wore a simple but elegant suit, exuding an undeniable charm. Their eyes met unexpectedly, and both of them froze for a moment. Ella couldn't hide her shy smile, while James approached with a look of surprise and joy. "Hello, Ella," James greeted, his deep voice sending a small shiver through her. "Didn't expect to see you here." Ella set down her coffee, her cheeks flushing slightly. "What a coincidence. she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. This is where I usually come to unwind after a long day. You too? James nodded, his smile gentle. Yes, there's nothing quite like a good cup of coffee to calm the mind. He gestured to the chair opposite her. Mind if I join you? Ella nodded, and James took a seat. They began to talk naturally, like old friends who had bumped into each other by chance. They discussed work, dreams, and the little things in life. Ella told James about her passions, books, music, and her dream of traveling the world. James listened attentively, his eyes lighting up whenever she laughed or spoke with excitement. James couldn't hide his admiration for Ella. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and had a unique brightness about her that he couldn't look away from. Yet deep inside, he kept the secret of his true identity. He cherished the simplicity and sincerity of these moments, afraid that if Ella knew he was the CEO of her company, everything would become complicated and might push them apart. As time went on, their meetings became more frequent. James and Ella often sat together after work, sometimes at the cafe, other times taking leisurely walks in the nearby park. They laughed, shared heartfelt conversations, and discovered the little joys in life together. Whenever he was with Ella, James felt like he was no longer the powerful, pressured businessman, but just a simple man searching for happiness in the ordinary moments. Ella gradualmente sintió la irresistible atracción que James tenía sobre ella. He was different from anyone she had ever known, genuine, warm, and somehow always able to understand her in a way that felt almost magical. Despite feeling the special connection between them, she never once considered that he might be anything other than an interesting man whom fate had somehow arranged for her to meet. Their relationship grew deeper, but it also carried truths that James could not avoid forever. With every beautiful moment shared with Ella, he wrestled with the question, could she forgive and accept the real him once the truth was revealed? The important day that Ella had been preparing for finally arrived. She adjusted her professional suit, carrying the well-thought-out presentation for the project that she and her team had poured their energy into over the past weeks. This was her chance to prove her capabilities to the company's senior board. Taking steady steps into the meeting room, Ella tried to calm her nerves, taking a deep breath to dispel the anxiety tightening in her chest. Ella walked into the conference room with confidence, her hands gripping the folder of materials tightly. This was a major opportunity, and she had meticulously prepared to present her ideas for a key project. Her eyes swept over the spacious room bathed in bright white light, where the company's top executives were already seated, waiting for her presentation. She drew a deep breath to steady herself, focusing on what she had to say. Subscribe to the channel now to discover more interesting and meaningful stories every day. But then, the door to the meeting room opened and every thought in Ella's mind froze. James walked in, not with his relaxed demeanor and warm smile she had come to know, but wearing the crisp suit of a powerful CEO. He took his place at the head of the table, his expression stern and distant. Ella stood motionless, feeling her heart stop. The truth crashed down on her, sudden and brutal, paralyzing her emotions. James, the man she had slowly opened her heart to, who had listened to her small stories and understood her quiet worries, was the CEO of her company, the person she had never imagined to be in the highest, most authoritative position. Shock coursed through every fiber of her being, and a wave of hurt tore through her chest. She stood there, desperately trying to keep her face composed, even as emotions twisted fiercely inside her. But deep down, she felt as though she were being torn apart by betrayal. The moments they had laughed together, the genuine conversations they had shared, all of it now seemed cloaked in a shadow of deceit. Everything blurred as Ella struggled to understand why he had kept this from her. James took his seat, and his eyes briefly flickered toward Ella. He saw the confusion in her gaze, the eyes that had once shone with joy when they laughed together, now clouded with disbelief and pain. A pang of regret washed over him, but he could only maintain a composed exterior. Anger surged through Ella. She felt betrayed, not just by the revelation of his true identity, but because he had made her feel a real, authentic connection, only for it to be founded on a massive lie. Each second that passed in the meeting room felt suffocating, as if all the air had been sucked out. She wondered if his words, his smiles, had ever truly been sincere, or if they were just part of a charade to hide the truth about who he was. The meeting began, but Ella could barely hear anything. Her mind replayed the same thoughts over and over. Yet she had no time to fall apart. The eyes of the executives were on her, waiting for her to proceed. Summoning every ounce of strength she had left, Ella pushed through the presentation, but inside her, a storm of emotions was raging. James sat at the head of the table, quietly listening, and though his expression showed a hint of remorse, it did nothing to lessen the ache in her heart. At the end of the meeting, Ella walked out with a stiff expression, her eyes avoiding everyone around her. Her heart was pounding, not with the thrill of a successful presentation, but with the overwhelming feelings of betrayal, pain, and anger swirling inside her like a storm. James didn't linger in the room either. He knew that an inevitable confrontation was looming. The meeting concluded with a heavy silence hanging in the air. Ella se apresuró a salir, incapaz de soportar la tensión un momento más. It felt as though everyone could see right through her to the anguish burning inside. Her steps were unsteady, but she forced herself to maintain her composure as she made her way down the empty hallway. James knew he couldn't let things continue like this. He quickly followed her, his heart pounding not only with the fear of losing the woman he loved, but also with the guilt that had weighed on him since they first met. "Ella, wait!" he called out, his voice no longer carrying the authority of a CEO but filled with worry and a desperate plea. Ella stopped. She turned around, and the hurt in her eyes pierced straight into his heart. "What do you want?" she said, her voice trembling. "You lied to me, James. You made me believe in moments that now feel like nothing but deception." James stood still, trying to maintain his composure. "Ella, I know you feel betrayed, and I'm so sorry, but what we had was real. Every word I spoke to you, every moment we shared, came from my heart." Ella let out a bitter laugh, her voice tinged with pain. "You say you love me, but you hid the most important truth about yourself. Do you have any idea how much that hurts?" She looked at him, her eyes welling up with tears. "I thought you were just a regular person, someone I could trust, but instead, you're the CEO of my company, someone powerful, and I'm just a lowly employee." James stepped closer, his gaze filled with regret. "I didn't hide my identity to deceive you," he said, his voice deep and sincere. "I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, everything between us would change. I wanted to be myself around you, not the CEO, just James, a man who fell in love with you." Ella felt her heart tearing in two. The truth was, she did love him, the man who shared gentle moments, laughter, and endless conversations about the little things in life. But the disappointment and sense of betrayal were still raw and undeniable. She shook her head, her voice cracking. "I don't know if I can trust you again." The emotional turmoil made her feel lost within her own heart. She loved him, but how could she be certain their connection was genuine when such a monumental secret had clouded everything? "I need time," Ella whispered, avoiding his gaze. "Time to think, to find myself again." James swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. He knew he had to let her go, even if it shattered his heart. "I'll wait," he said, his voice trembling with pain. "I won't pressure you, but I hope you'll realize that my love for you is real." Time passed and Ella tried to focus on work, hoping to regain her balance. She threw herself into her projects, dedicating all her energy to the demanding deadlines and intense meetings. Yet every time she was reminded of her memories with James, her heart wavered. Each smile, each look he had given her, made her long for the warmth and safety she once felt. During their time apart, James endured the emptiness and agony of missing her. He knew there was nothing he could do but wait and hope. He kept his promise, giving her the space she needed, even though every day without her felt like a dagger to his heart. Each day he went to the office and saw Ella working without interacting with him. His heart ached. He knew he had to give her the space she deserved, but the inability to comfort or be near her tore him apart. Still, he remained resolute, determined to prove his sincerity and redeem himself. As time went on, James never stopped trying to show that his love and sincerity for Ella were genuine. He knew that only actions and patience could win back her trust. He started with small gestures, offering quiet and thoughtful support. He attended board meetings but refrained from interfering in her work, always keeping his distance while subtly showing his unwavering support. Ella noticed the change in James. He no longer seemed like the controlling, powerful man she once imagined him to be. Instead, he became humble and patient, respecting her space and never demanding or pressuring her. Even so, the wounds were still fresh, and she knew it would take time for them to fully heal. In the meantime, Ella poured her energy into her work and achieved remarkable success. She led a crucial project, a groundbreaking marketing campaign that she had tirelessly worked on. Under her confident leadership, her team performed with exceptional efficiency, and the campaign quickly made a significant impact. Her achievements drew the attention of the board, who came to admire and respect her resilience and talent. Yet even with all her accomplishments, Ella still felt an emptiness inside. She missed the genuine moments she had shared with James, but the pain of his deception lingered. One evening, while working late at the office, she found a handwritten letter left on her desk. The familiar handwriting of James made her pause, her heart pounding. "Ella," the letter began, "I know that nothing I do can erase the pain I caused, but I want you to know that every day I carry the weight of my regret. I don't expect you to forgive me instantly, but I hope you see that my love is real, and I will always be here, supporting you from afar. I'm proud of you and everything you've accomplished. You are stronger than anyone I've ever known. James." Ella held the letter, her eyes brimming with tears. Each word radiated a sincerity she had never felt so clearly. A part of her recognized the genuine change in James. He had learned how to love without control, to support without imposing. As more time passed, Ella realized that James had truly transformed. He was no longer just a powerful man in a suit, but someone who had learned from his mistakes and grown because of them. His actions were no longer attempts to cover up his missteps, but signs of his unwavering love and commitment. She decided to give him another chance, but this time with clear boundaries and principles. They took the time to talk about what had happened, addressing the pain and disappointment, but also dreaming of new hopes and possibilities. Both of them committed to building a relationship rooted in honesty, unafraid to confront their past wounds and work to heal together. They moved forward slowly, without rushing or making unrealistic demands. James remained patient and respected Ella's limits, while she gradually opened her heart and allowed him back into her life. They both knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to walk it together, prepared to embrace a new chapter where love was not just an emotion, but a commitment built on trust and maturity. Ella's hard work and dedication were finally rewarded. After successfully completing the major project, the board decided to promote her to head of marketing. The news was announced one morning in the conference room, where Ella stood surrounded by her colleagues, her eyes shining with pride and joy. She couldn't believe that her journey from a passionate young marketing analyst to a top leadership position in the company had become a reality. James stood nearby, a gentle and proud smile lighting up his face. He couldn't express how happy he was to see the woman he loved conquer every challenge and reach the pinnacle of her career. He clapped the loudest, his gaze full of love and admiration for Ella. At that moment, he knew that all the trials and hardships they had faced only made their bond stronger. The love between Ella and James was now built on a stronger foundation than ever before. They had learned to love without hiding or lying, and each day they felt more connected, not just through admiration, but through the respect and trust they had worked so hard to rebuild. They cherished every moment together, from simple dinners to walks by the Hudson River at sunset. Their love had overcome the barriers of status and identity, leaving only sincerity and a deep, unbreakable bond. A few months later, Ella and James received the happiest news of their lives. They were expecting their first child. They couldn't contain their emotions and happiness at the thought of a tiny new life joining their world. They began making plans for the future, preparing everything so that their child would grow up in a loving and supportive family. One beautiful evening, Ella and James stood on the balcony of their apartment, gazing at the sky illuminated by the twinkling city lights. A gentle breeze swept through Ella's hair, And James wrapped his arms around her from behind, softly placing his hands on her belly, where new life was growing. They smiled, knowing that the road ahead would be full of challenges, but they were ready to face it all together. We've come such a long way, haven't we? Ella susurró, sus ojos siguiendo las reflexiones de la luz en los rascacielos. Yes, James replied, his voice tender but resolute. And I can't imagine this journey without you. You and our baby are the most precious things in my life. Ella sonrió, su corazón rebosando de amor y felicidad. We'll be great, won't we? I believe that as long as we have love and sincerity, we can overcome anything. James nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. Yes, we'll be great. And I know our future will be filled with incredible wonders. The story ends with Ella and James standing together, hand in hand, looking up at the star-filled sky. They knew that love wasn't just a feeling, but a continuous effort, perseverance, and unwavering trust. They had overcome the greatest challenges together and were ready to step into a new chapter of their lives with hope and a strong, unbreakable bond. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give us a like and share to spread these inspiring stories with more people. Thank you.